My wife goes to her sister and says, "Hey, you want to tell her about the plan?" And I immediately kind of felt that hot pressure of embarrassment and said, "Nah, I don't want to. I'm tired." And she's like, "Oh, okay, okay." She was obviously fine with that. And then I kind of sat there, I was sitting with it, and I'm like kind of looking around. I'm like, why am I embarrassed to tell her this? Like she's too, I knew 100% she was not going to judge me whatsoever. And so I sat with it for a little bit, and then eventually I was kind of thinking to myself, like now you got to just tell her, right? You can't just like you've already kind of had these talks with yourself about how you're like this is the plan. You're committing to the plan, and then now you're afraid to tell people about it. And kind of the first thing that was triggered in my mind was how I had comparable feelings with some of the side hustles I was doing in the past, and being embarrassed to tell people that I was trying to start, a car detailing business or marketing agency or was trading crypto or whatever it was. And then in hindsight, looking back on that and realizing maybe I was embarrassed because I shouldn't have been doing that. Maybe I should have been embarrassed because I was falling into that Peter Pan syndrome, like attempting to do something that doesn't necessarily make sense for the situation that you're in, right? Having a young family and you're out here trying to create some entrepreneurial endeavor while your wife's making all this money and working super hard. And then my thought went to, okay, well, if I'm embarrassed about this plan and I've been embarrassed about things in the past that didn't work out that I probably shouldn't have done, then maybe this embarrassment is pointing towards me, towards telling me that maybe this plan is not great. And I was kind of spiraling, and that when I got that point, I'm like, no, I gotta just tell her the plan. And obviously the question being why I was embarrassed, one of the answers being because it's potentially indicating to me that this plan is not ideal. But again, something I want to sit with a little bit more. But also it kind of comes back to this idea of the mask I've been wearing. And last summer we moved here, and obviously the kids are not in school, so someone has to watch them. And so I was responsible for watching them last summer. Kind of paused this silly side hustle I was doing at the time. And when we first got here, we were in a hotel because our house wasn't ready yet. And so the routine was we'd wake up, we'd eat breakfast, and then we'd go to my sister-in-law's house, this same sister-in-law from yesterday. And we just kind of hang out there all day. And then once we moved into our house, they would come over sometimes, but usually I would just go there just because it was easier. And the idea was, oh, well, I'll bring them there, and then I can kind of sit there on my computer and do my silly side hustle, at least for a couple of hours. But then ultimately I'd get there, and for the first couple of weeks I did that, but then I stopped doing that and just kind of just like hung out basically all summer. And her husband, so she doesn't work, her husband works. And so I'd be there, and he'd kind of come home from work, and I would immediately have this feeling of like, again, like the inadequacy, because I'm sitting here like doing nothing all day, and he's been up since, I think he gets up at 4 o'clock in the morning, he says, to go into work to provide for his family. Whereas I'm at her house, playing video games with my kids or watching them play video games and messing around on my computer, or I don't necessarily even know what I did all day. I do remember being super bored, but then kind of feeling awkward of, I don't want to be working because then I feel like I'm making her watch my kids, which she would have been fine with, but I felt uncomfortable doing that, and also that could also be cope of me not wanting to work. But yeah, he'd kind of come back, and I would kind of suppress that feeling of inadequacy for sure. But I think the way I kind of presented myself in that scenario, because I was, felt that feeling of inadequacy, is I was kind of overcompensating with the mask of being like this super macho, funny, witty guy. And I think that's kind of how I've presented myself to their family. And then now I'm telling them like, hey, that's actually not the case. I've actually tried all these side hustles, and I failed, and now I'm taking a break from all that and watching the kids. I was just embarrassed to kind of admit that, because in a sense you're admitting that you failed, and no one wants to do that. It's a huge blow to the ego, which is kind of why I forced myself to admit that to her, because I knew that's what was going on. I knew that I was protecting my ego, and it was exposure therapy in a sense. And obviously I said it, and she was like, "Oh yeah, no, I understand," and the conversation didn't go super far for other reasons, but which is interesting because, again, kind of going back to this idea of you think you got things figured out and then you don't. I thought I was, to some degree, coming to terms with the plan, and then the first person that I'm supposed to present the plan to, I'm embarrassed to do it. So I thought that was interesting.